We see you. Welcome to Queer Conversations. I'm your host, Gia Vergy TV, and I'm in Jerusalem, Israel. And my guest today is Tyler Gregory, aka Ty, and he's Executive Director of A Wider Bridge. Welcome, Ty.
Thank you, G. Good to be here.
Great to have you. And so A Wider Bridge has coordinated and is hosting this amazing journey that I'm experiencing along with many other LGBT leaders in Israel. And Ty's going to talk about why is he doing this, why is the Wider Bridge doing this, and who the Wider Bridge is, and so on. So we want you to ask questions. We want you to, any comments, and share this video. And please like this page. This page is Vergy TV. We amplify the voice and visibility of LGBT community. And so I see Minnie here. Hey, Minnie, welcome. And welcome everybody who's watching. And for people who are just joining, we have Ty Gregory, who is Executive Director of A Wider Bridge. Welcome.
Thank you.
And so tell us a little bit about what A Wider Bridge is.
Sure. So in a nutshell, we're the American LGBT organization advancing LGBT rights in Israel.
Okay.
And we think that it's important that LGBT people in the U.S. and around the world advance the struggle internationally. And we think that the LGBT community in Israel is particularly important both as a Jewish community, that the Jewish state of Israel is supportive of its LGBT community, but also because we think that the LGBT community here can play a really important role in bringing together people who are traumatized and who are deeply affected by this very difficult Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The LGBT table in Israel is one of the few places that brings together different types of Israelis and Palestinians to work on a shared cause, and we think that that's something to invest in and celebrate.
Okay. So I'll tell you, one of my challenges when I first learned about it, this organization, and was invited, was that question about the Palestinians. Mm-hmm. And I know a lot of people here have that question. And maybe we'll wait for more people to come on before we get to that.
Sure.
We're going to talk about that.
Save the red meat.
Yeah, exactly. So a little about yourself. What took you to this kind of work?
Sure. So I grew up in a Reform Jewish household, and I learned from a very early age from my grandparents, a couple of whom went through the Holocaust, that it was really important for us to stand up for ourselves and to have a state of Israel that can have this Jewish society that Jews around the world can look to as a place of safety, but also a place of celebration of our values and our culture and our history, was something really important to me as a kid, and I felt really connected to that part of the story.
So for people who don't know, what's a Reformed?
A Reformed Jew, it's a denomination of Judaism.
Okay.
It's someone who, it's a progressive strain of Judaism. It's a way of interpreting the texts and not taking them literally.
Okay.
And I think is a place that's very open to different types of people, gender, sexual orientation.
Okay, great.
In particular, and I really enjoy the kind of community that it provides.
Okay, great. And I always ask everybody who comes on Queer Conversations, how do you identify?
I identify as gay.
As gay.
Use male pronouns.
Okay, and male pronouns. Okay. And you can share a little bit of your coming out story.
Sure. Keeping the theme, I was the president of a Jewish fraternity in college at UC Davis in Northern California, and just couldn't hold it in anymore. I was running a weekly meeting of the fraternity and decided to come out to the whole fraternity while I was up there running the show, and just decided to rip off the Band-Aid.
Wow.
And so that it's not a traditional place. Greek life isn't associated with acceptance, although I think it's dramatically improving.
Okay, good.
But I had a very positive experience there, and the reaction of the folks around me, I think really it was a positive influence in my life.
Great. And what about for your family, like your parents?
My mother's mother was a lesbian, actually.
Oh.
And I think that my mom saw how unhappy she was to be a lesbian in a time that it wasn't accepted.
Right.
She left her husband, my grandfather, to live with another woman, and she was a chain smoker, an alcoholic, got cancer young, and passed away before I was born. I think all because she had this deep depression about not being able to be who she was.
Wow.
And so my mom saw that and has always been very supportive of these issues.
Great.
And I'm very grateful, even if it took that really tragic experience of her
Right.
mother
Mm-hmm.
for me to be in a constructive environment. But, I'm grateful to be brought up in that.
That's great. Yeah, sorry about your grandmother, but happy that it influenced your life in this way that you could be yourself.
Thank you.
Right? Yeah. So for those of us who are joining us now, we have Ty Gregory, who is with Wider Bridge. This is the organization for people who have been noticing. Last week, Tuesday, I went live from Tel Aviv, and this week I'm in Jerusalem. And why is it important for and that's my former husband David Muir, who came up there.
Hi, David.
This is Ty, and we nickname each other Sexy Exy. That's like a whole, because we're both.
I like it.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So why is it important for someone like myself? Because I've been taken aback is a strong word, but kind of like, why would you why is it important to an organization to bring I'm Jamaican, I'm LGBTQ, I'm living in South Florida, how does it help, or why select someone like myself?
Sure. So, this is your show, but I want to turn that question back on you after I'm done.
Oh, sure. It's a conversation, by the way, so you
go.
can ask me questions.
Okay, I will.
Yes.
Listen, I think this is a really complicated topic.
Yes.
A lot of folks intently watch what's happening in this part of the world, and there's a lot of deep division, a lot of deep confusion, and a lot of animosity on all sides about what's happening there. And it manifests in our progressive movement in ways that are often toxic. Mm-hmm. Toxic towards one another and toxic on the political stage. And I think that if we as a progressive movement, as an LGBT community, want to win elections, want to make sure that our voice is stronger, we need to find a way to bridge the divides, because there is disagreement in our community on this issue. And so we think by bringing community leaders like you and Nikki and the other 28 people on this trip to Israel, that we can help bridge some of the confusion, the lack of understanding that too often divides folks, and find ways to validate the humanity on every side of this issue. And to be able to partner with you when you get back to help change the way people think about it, I think is a really transformative experience, not only for folks on the trip, but folks in their communities when they get home.
Yeah, I agree. What's your question? You have a question for me, or not yet?
What do you think so far? How has it impacted your understanding?
It's profound. I would say that. I think that watching the news, and I don't watch the news that much, but watching the news during my lifetime, and the story that we hear about Israel is pretty much one story, repeated over and over, and I didn't know most of the things that I'm learning here. I did not know. And just the level of the complexities of this nation, and just the history of how it started and why it started, and why some reasons why some people may think it started. Like today we were at the Holocaust Museum, and the conversation started about that Israel is not a result of the Holocaust, which some people believe. And just so much to do with, all the different groups that live here. So it's, like I said, it's been profound, it's been complex and challenging. You hear I'm always asking questions to try and navigate.
As you should.
Yeah, navigate this world here, because we probably get this much, and it's really like infinite, the information. And I was like 10 days. That's long, but the 10 days in a way, I mean, by the way, everybody, let me tell you, we are packing in a lot of, hey, everybody, thank you so much for joining. For those of you just joining, this is Ty Gregory, and he's Executive Director of A Wider Bridge. The reason why I'm here today, and Nikki's here, and we have 28 other LGBT leaders from all over the United States. And I now lost my train of thought. Okay. What was I saying?
We're packing in.
We're packing in. Thank you. Packing in long days. We went to LGBT Center in Tel Aviv, one here in Jerusalem. We've done some historical sites, like we're at the old Jerusalem today, where Jesus is buried. So this great variety of experiences, a Holocaust museum. And so a lot is packed in, and I'm grateful, but it still is going to be like, it's just a lot to learn. But there still is so much more, So I'm appreciative of that. But yeah, I think it is important that, and I'm grateful that I'm here, because there's so much that I wouldn't have known. Like, there's no book I could really read, and no show I could watch, right, that could let me really experience, because it's a little immersion, like we're a little immersed here in a culture. So I think it's good. I think it's good. And people watching are probably like, hold on a second, G is in Israel. And, so I didn't share. Like lots of times when I travel, I feel like I just want to get to the place and then I'll share. So only my very closest people even knew that I was going to make this trip. So suddenly last week, Tuesday, they would have seen Tel Aviv and we started sharing the story. But then I've been sharing it and I'm also writing about it. So I'll be sharing that as
Fantastic.
well. Yeah, as well. So, and if you have any questions, if you have any questions, please ask me any questions, ask Ty any questions. They're bringing people. How long have you been doing this? How long has the organization been bringing in people from United States to Israel?
So our origin story happened after a tragedy in 2009. There was a shooting in an LGBT youth club in Tel Aviv. A masked gunman walked into the center and started opening fire. 2 people were killed that day, 11 were injured, and to this day no one knows who did it. They still can't figure out who the perpetrator was. But this is an incredibly traumatic event for the community. It's when the Israelis found out about the Pulse nightclub shooting, it was definitely sort of a reverberation to that trauma because there were so many similarities in the story. But after this happened in 2009, these organizations, these community leaders started reaching out to the U.S., seeking help, seeking support, and seeking community. And so we started running these trips so that people could understand their stories, because our founder said it shouldn't take a tragedy for us to start understanding each other and for us to start supporting each other. So these trips, the first one in 2011, and annually now twice a year, hopefully more, were really meant to bridge the gap and to help bring LGBT communities together to grow from one another.
Okay, great. I'm glad that, sad what took place, of course, but then what's taking place now is very powerful. I see a question here from David, and it just left. It said, "What is the truth?" David. Hey, Anne-Marie, thanks for joining. This is Ty, he's Executive Director of A Wider Bridge, and that's the organization. Okay, here's a question.
David said, what truths? Are you hearing all 3 sides of the story?
What is the truth of why the Jews and Palestinians are fighting over land? Whose land is it? Why not share and live in peace? Ty, please answer those questions.
Thank you for that very small question.
Yeah, I know. It's massive, but go ahead.
It is a conflict between the Israelis and the Palestinians, but I don't like to talk about sides because I think that it takes away the experience of the individual. As you know, we've met Israelis on all sides.
Yes.
And tomorrow we're going to the West Bank, we're going to Ramallah and Bethlehem, and we're going to meet with Palestinians on all sides with different perspectives.
Yes.
So I don't necessarily like the term sides.
Okay.
But I think what this boils down to is this is a long-standing debate between 2 indigenous people with overlapping claims to the same land.
Okay.
And ultimately, if we're going to have peace here, not only do we need to validate their legitimacy, both sides, they need to understand the humanity and legitimacy of the other side's claim to the land. And so I think we're in a place where the divisions that we see on the ground are being echoed back in the U.S., where people are picking a side and saying this side's right and this side's wrong, and that's really only adding to the divide.
Right.
People need to be humanized in this conflict. And until that happens, I don't know that there's going to be peace. And I think that we can do our part as LGBT people who have been through a process of dehumanization,
right,
to really understand that and bring our voices to the table to validate the different people who are a part of this issue. I think we can be a positive force for good.
Yes, as the LGBT community,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. Hopefully that answers your question, David. Any other questions, please ask any questions. And I mean, it's interesting because when we think of things like this conflict that's been happening all these years, I think that the last thing people would think of is that our community would come in to say, hey, what can we do? And and I've heard some people feel like that we're going to be the people that can really bring a great change. And that's something that this is what leads you to doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
Right?
I think that we had a participant that came on our trip last year.
Okay.
And he talked about the conflict between the UK and Ireland and how it was really the LGBT community that were going to the bars of each side and coming together in bars that led to different kind of connections that didn't exist before, to bridge the divides in that conflict that was very bloody not long ago.
Right.
And when he came here, he saw the same opportunity through the LGBT community. You've been in Tel Aviv. There are Muslim Jewish couples that are dating, that are hooking up for one night, that are getting married, that are having lives together, that work together at WeWork or at Google, whatever it is. There's a lot of interaction and there's a lot of connection there in the center. And I think that we as an LGBT community are unique because we can bring together these different groups around a shared cause. So I see the fight for LGBT rights not only about our community and acceptance, but it can have reverberations in Israeli and Palestinian society to see the other.
Right.
Because right now there's not enough of seeing the other. And we know that struggle, and we are still fighting that battle in the U.S.
We have another question here that I probably can answer much of this from my probably 6 days here so
ahead.
far. So is the LGBT community marginalized in Israel? What is it like as a gay man? Or are you discriminated against? So Ty doesn't live in Israel. You're in New York, right?
I'm a New Yorker.
New York.
Yeah.
Guilty, yes. And I'm a former New Yorker. Big up New York. But I can say from what I've learned here, Tel Aviv is very accepting. It feels maybe like somewhere like New York City or San Francisco, just very and Fort Lauderdale. No one felt, I didn't feel any, if anybody was concerned about me walking, holding Nikki's hand. We saw couples, there was a film festival, it was people were in drag and so on. But where we are in Jerusalem, and by the way, we're going to be at Tel Aviv Pride this Friday. And Tel Aviv right now has, multitudes of pride flags. I don't know if I've ever seen that many pride flags in any city. So Tel Aviv has this really welcoming spirit. And then Jerusalem, where we are now, and we went to the open house yesterday, which is an organization here serving the LGBTQ community, and it's very different here. So this is a place that's more challenging, and it feels like much more of Israel is more challenging, but Tel Aviv is like this kind of maybe bubble of very open and welcoming and more than tolerant, but while the rest of the country is struggling. Correct?
I think that's very accurate. Israel's ahead of us on many fronts. They had open gay and lesbian service in the military in 1993. Took us another 18 years to get that. On the other hand, there's no such thing as gay marriage in Israel.
Right.
And that's a reflection of the different relationship between church and state that exists in Israel. But, there's different legal achievements, there's different social achievements, but also you look into more marginalized communities in Israel and it's much harder to be openly LGBT. The Ethiopian community that we met with, there's a lot of homophobia, transphobia. The Arab community, of course, the religious, the Orthodox community. We still have battles to fight in these other marginalized communities within Israel. As you know, to be a minority within a minority is challenging, and they're fighting those same battles that LGBT people of color and other minority LGBT folks in the U.S. are fighting. So there's a lot of parallel struggles that exist there that we're still working on here and supporting. And
in addition to the LGBT experience, what's impacted me as well is thinking about race here and how in the end, mostly everybody is Jewish, right? But then you are Jewish and I could also be Jewish. And I think sometimes when you're in America, you don't really we see Ty, right? But then you don't see the Jew that looks like me, really, not really as much. So that's something, and all the different shades, I grew up in Kingston, Jamaica, where we have a lot of what people said Sephardic Jews, a little darker, and I say a lot of people here remind me of people in Jamaica and some people who are Arabs here as well. We have those features. So let me see here. You haven't seen the pride flags in Wilton Manors? No. There are a lot of pride flags in Wilton Manors, but right now Tel Aviv has probably every store has one. So it's just because it's Pride Week. So I think that's why there's more. But yes. That's my friend Linda. Hey, Linda, thanks for joining. Thank you, everyone, for joining. I'm in Jerusalem. We went from Tel Aviv to, what's the name of the place we went to after?
Golan Heights.
Golan Heights, where we went to Nazareth. We went to the Galilee.
Yep.
Galilee. Now we're in Jerusalem. And that's also, I grew up going to Christian schools in Jamaica. the schools there, the public schools are Christian, and so all these names of these places I know very well, and it feels a little surreal that we are here. Hey, hello, thank you for joining. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Ty is the executive director of A Wider Bridge. This is the organization that has organized and hosted this LGBT mission to Israel, and it's brought a really diverse group of people from the United States, people from Fort Lauderdale and New York, and throughout the whole country.
All over.
Yeah.
Iowa,
right?
We got Minneapolis.
Yeah. How do you guys, how do you do this?
How do we
figure out people from all over the country?
I think it's just organic networking. We partner with alumni of our missions, and we ask them, who are the really intellectually curious, motivated activists that would benefit from this experience?
Okay, good.
And so I think a lot of it is natural. But, we want folks like you, folks who have networks like what we're doing right now.
Yeah, exactly right.
They can reflect on these experiences. This is a really complicated issue to unpack, and kudos to you for doing it.
Yes,
and I think people often feel like they don't have the tools, they don't have the level of knowledge to engage. It's easier to shut off a really complex issue than to engage. And I think that's the message. Whether you think you know enough or you don't, I've been to Israel a dozen times, I still don't feel like I know enough.
Right.
But I think the message is, no matter how often you hear how much you feel like you know, there's always more to learn.
Yes.
And we can use our basic instincts of doing good to engage in this issue, regardless of how much experience that we have.
Yes. Yeah, I feel also like looking at how Israel has just put so much energy into creating this environment where people just really love each other and care about each other a lot, and want to have families, and really want to have these. And I know it's different now, LGBTQ, but I see we were in the Knesset yesterday, which is the parliament, which is how would you say in the United States? I guess Congress, legislature.
Yeah.
And there was a man there, one of the members of parliament, who has children with his husband, right? Or maybe not husband. Yeah, his husband. So families are growing. But there's something that I see here that really is inspiring, how much people, they recruited immigrants to come here. The opposite of what we hear where we are now, And I was really touched by the story of the Ethiopians too. My name is Gannett, and as an Ethiopian name, my parents are Jamaican but gave me an Ethiopian name, and I do have some features that people feel are Ethiopian. And so they have a place called the Ethiopian Absorption Center for when people come in from Ethiopia, especially it seems like a lot of people come from rural areas, and to help them learn, you have to learn Hebrew, right, to really function here well. Yeah, learn Hebrew and just learn about the culture. And to be there was just a really incredible experience to see. We saw people in classrooms learning, and it was just beautiful. So to see diversity here that I don't think a lot of people are really aware of. And I asked this man who looked like he could be my brother, and I said, and they have a lot of Ethiopian things there, like the garb and the style of how they're serving us. And I said, because I'm calling him an Ethiopian Jew, right? And I said, what do you call yourself? And he said, Israeli. And I was like, okay, to just get that understanding.
Yeah.
It was really, really very powerful. Okay, let's see here. Oh, a comment from Nikki. Oh, Nikki, who happens to be right back here. So, hi. And by the way, we're in a fabulous hotel. All the hotels have been fabulous. Thank you. It is I think it's a brand new hotel, right?
Yep.
It's just months old. It's in, I think, the heart of Jerusalem. We were on the roof, beautiful view. We were in Old Jerusalem today. Just fabulous. Let's see what Nikki's saying. I love that AWB seems to work for a holistic point of view, bringing people to Israel and connecting to various leaders, but also supporting many groups within Israel on the grounds. And how do you end up, and I don't know how we are at time, you have to let me know, but
6 minutes.
6 minutes, great. How do you connect? So one thing that we did, probably our first day here, and I thought it was really a good idea to have us connect with the LGBT groups here. What kind of work are they doing? What's their challenges? How did you connect with all these groups here? Because you're in America.
Yeah.
And this is in Israel.
Well, we have a staff person here in Tel Aviv.
Okay.
Who's our partner with all the different organizations here in Israel. There's officially 16 LGBT organizations. Every month they have a meeting to coordinate how they're going to advance work across the country in their different fields. There's a transgender community organization, an Orthodox LGBT community organization, etc., and they all partner together to try to advance the work. And we ask, what can we do in America, and it's our role as LGBT people to help advance the work. As many people know, the U.S. and Israel have a very close relationship.
Right.
It's political, but it's also cultural. We share a lot of history together. And so we think that we can leverage the fact that there is a close relationship to advance the LGBT cause back and forth. So one thing that we do is we provide grants to different organizations. We were in Haifa. We give a grant to the Haifa Community Center to help transgender members of their community. Right. We support the Orthodox Project so that they can be seen and heard in their communities where it's very difficult to be out and accepted. And if you have a baby, to have a baby naming ceremony by your rabbi is unheard of in these very religious Orthodox communities. So we need to give these folks the support that they need. And so that's one important role that we can play. Number two, we have a very big media market in the U.S. Israel's media market's they have 8 million people. We have 320 million. And so if we can raise the voices up of the LGBT Israelis in our communities and in our news stories, we think we can mobilize more folks to get involved in their struggle. And we think that that's an important role that we can play here to advance LGBT rights in this country.
Oh, I love it. Do you feel like that all LGBTQ people in the world, like that there's a sense that we're a global family, like whether you live in Israel or Jamaica or New York, that we are connected?
I do. I think that we all have a set of shared experiences. At the end of the day, I think we just want to be ourselves.
Right.
And I think that a wider bridge can be a model for other countries. I think that on one hand, the last election was a setback for our work internationally because we had to look inwards to protect the gains that we've made. Whereas maybe if there was a different outcome, we could have been more outwardly focused to expand our gains internationally in places like Israel, but also Russia that's struggling tremendously, Africa.
Yes.
And I think a lot of the energy that may have gone there shifted back. So it's a double-edged sword. But I do think that our community can gain from the experiences of other communities who may have used strategies that we may not have thought of yet to advance the work happening back at home. So I think it's incredibly important to be interconnected and supporting one another because this is a global struggle. And a lot of the proponents and opponents of LGBT rights in the U.S. are having massive impacts on what's happening.
Yes, no question. And you mentioned something there that I've been saying to Nikki, because I'm involved in Montego Bay Pride. I come from the other side of Jamaica, Kingston, but an attorney in Toronto, Maurice Tomlinson, is very involved in Montego Bay Pride, and he recruited me. Yeah. And I got involved, and I'm here, and I'm saying, we need this for Jamaica, and Jamaica has probably 2 million people inside Jamaica, but outside, I don't know, many millions, because people who are not born in Jamaica still identify as Jamaicans. So I was like, well, if we could do this, and we have a lot of resources.
Yep.
So I might be leaning on you
to
get some guidance, because Jamaica, and it's going to be, for Jamaica too, it's going to help people in Jamaica, but it's going to also help meeting people who are gay, but it's going to also help people who want to travel there, right? And that's going to help Jamaica's economy. So it's like it would be better in so many ways if Jamaica is more accepting and welcoming of our community. So we're going to work on that.
2 comments.
Okay.
From 2 different Anne-Maries.
Okay, let's hear it, because it's gone.
Anne-Marie Chin says, proud of your efforts, G, to break down walls and barriers.
Thank you so much, Anne-Marie Chin.
And Anne-Marie Brown, so proud of what you're trying to accomplish, and thanks for sharing and bringing more awareness to this. It's awesome.
Thank you, Anne-Marie Brown. I saw Linda was on too. Thank you, Linda. I see here, okay.
And you have 2
David. He's big on questions as well. Like I'm big on questions, he's big on questions. Are all humans connected in any ways? Why single out LGBT folks?
Why single us out? Because we've been singled out.
I love that. It's true.
I'm just going to stop there.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, that's a great point. I think we're going to be wrapping up now.
Sure.
Yeah. What's the time?
This is
It's time to wrap up. Well, and before we wrap up, I wanted to congratulate you because you are engaged to be married.
I am, yes.
And your wedding is just around the corner.
It is, 17th.
17th, wow, that's really around the corner. So as you get back, you got to get ready. You know what you're wearing, you know everything already. You guys ready?
We are ready. I don't know if my fiance is thrilled that I'm in a different continent right now, but we're very excited, and
great.
It should be a great time.
Well, an absolute pleasure having you on Queer
Thank
Conversations.
You.
Thanks again for bringing me, bringing Nikki, bringing everybody. Shout out to all the people here. And everybody here in we see Nikki. This is our hotel room here, and so we have another guest coming. So so shout out to all the people who are here on this mission with us. Shout out to all the people who have welcomed us. Tons of people we've met, the different people who've come to speak with us, welcome us into their communities and their community centers. Thank you to everybody. And I'm just going to close with a few what I call QQ closing questions, so Queer Conversations closing questions. What makes you laugh?
What makes me laugh? Rick and Morty.
Okay.
You know that show?
I vaguely remember that.
It's a good show.
Okay, I'm going to have to Google it after. Oh my gosh. What's sexy to you?
Confidence.
Oh, nice. I like confidence too. And then what's so great about being queer?
Freedom. I think it's all about freedom and breaking expectations.
I love that. Well, thanks again, Ty.
Thank you.
Oh, great to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, bye guys. I'll be back next week in America. Next week Tuesday I'll be filming from Fort Lauderdale. Take care. Thanks for watching. Please share.